All right, a very good afternoon to all our attendees from all over the country and some other parts of the world. A big welcome. Thank you for being part of this truly exciting and all-important webinar today. We know that cybersecurity has escalated dramatically over the past few years, and it's affecting more and more SMEs all the time. And to have a discussion around this topic is hugely important, and I will introduce our two guest speakers in a few moments. But the topic of the day: can your business survive a cyber attack? And what I'll do is I'll chat to cybersecurity experts Chris Carsten and Gina Ganal, all the way from the United States of America. I know that a different time zone. I truly thank them for being here. All about security risks for SMEs, cybersecurity best practices, and cybersecurity education, resources, and tools. So hugely important, and of course must attend. We've really got the experts, and let me give you an introduction to our two guests. Chris Carsten, who's the Vice President of Cyber Threat Intelligence, Cyber and Intelligence Solutions at MasterCard, all the way from New York, and he'll be joining us on stage now. And we've got Gina Ganal, a PhD, is Vice President of Product Management, Cyber and Intelligence at MasterCard, all the way from St. Louis, Missouri. So please join me on stage. Truly grateful to have you on board. Chris, welcome to you, and Gina, welcome. Hugely exciting. That's exactly it. Thank you for taking your incredible, invaluable time out to share with the insights of what you have. And we know MasterCard has been a big partner of the NSBC for many years. We know that your attention to the SMB or SME sector is extremely important, and what you do for the SME sector globally is highly regarded, and certainly by us and by many. So we thank you for what you do and the difference that you do make for that all-important sector, because we know that whether we call it small business, SME, or SMBs, it's the most important sector of the future. It is the sector that's going to alleviate unemployment and drive job creation throughout the world, and that's why we need to attend and help wherever we can to help these business owners who run these businesses stay in business, grow, so that they can employ others. So a very big welcome, and I've got some amazing questions here that have been given to me, and now I don't have first of all, Chris, just an opening message from yourself, and Gina, maybe a quick 2 seconds.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, Mike, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be with everyone on the stream. We really look forward to talking with small business owners about the ways that they can improve their cybersecurity. It's a very important topic, and we're just really happy to be here.
Absolutely. I echo what you're saying, Chris. And another thing, Mike, I want everybody to know that small businesses, according to the World Bank, they represent 90% of global employers. So just like you said, they are the future, and they are employing more employees across the world. So it's very important that we do everything we can to help these small businesses get cyber secure.
Absolutely. And Gina, thanks for that comment. I mean, it's huge. And, one of our key trademarks is small business is big business. And many people don't understand how big it really is, and so thank you for that insight. And in South Africa, 2/3 of the working population work in a small business. And by 2030, more than 93% of the working population will work in a small business. So that is the trend. And as you say, not only in South Africa and around the world. And of course, I hear that in Switzerland, 99.2% of the working population work in a small business. So again, back to the topic of the day. I know, and I'm not just since the pandemic, but but certainly over the past few years, the importance around cybersecurity has just become phenomenal. And the perception from our side and a lot of our research coming out is that cyber attacks don't really affect the SME sector. And what I'm learning, and you will know this a lot more than I do, it's affecting more SMEs now than ever before, and it will continue to escalate in the future. So it's something that we cannot ignore. And that's why this discussion today is so important. Well, I've got these questions. I'm not going to direct one to each specific. And please, at Freedom, you can either both join in or you can one at a time. And if you don't mind, once you finish, because I tend to talk a lot, Chris and Gina. So once you finish, you can say back to you, Mike, and I'll jump into the next question that I do have. But let's open up and let's say, right, I've got them in front of me, so I'll just refer to the notes because it's spontaneous, it's not planned. What does the cyber threat landscape look like today, and how prevalent are attacks on micro, small, and medium enterprises?
Yeah, I can take this one, Mike. So I think there's kind of two trends within the cyber threat landscape that are particularly germane to small businesses. So the first one is that we're continuing to see year-over-year increases in cyber attacks across most sectors, but we're seeing more acute increases in malicious activity affecting small businesses, actually. And so just to kind of put this into perspective, in 2023 alone, over 70% of small businesses reported that they had experienced a data breach or a cyber attack of some kind, and that's a fairly significant percentage of respondents to those types of surveys. The second kind of trend that I think is worth noting is what we're also seeing is an increasing what I would call professionalization of the cyber criminal ecosystem. So a good example of this would be ransomware actors. You often hear a lot of people talk about ransomware actors, and we can talk a little bit about that in more detail later. But essentially, these are groups where people start to specialize in specific skill sets. So when you think about a ransomware incident, I think a few years ago, people used to think of like one or two people doing it. Now it's an entire team of people where they specialize in different aspects of the kill chain, from initial access to the folks that actually deploy the ransomware, the folks that handle the extortion and communication with the victim. And what that basically means is they've gotten very, very good at extorting lots of money. And so, if you look at ransomware actors alone, they surpassed over $1 billion in extorted cryptocurrency just in 2023. So kind of the kind of two key takeaways is that, this is definitely an issue that affects small businesses and something that where they're dealing with more sophisticated threats as time goes on. So back to you.
Absolutely. And Chris and Gina, what we know is that, many of the very big brands can survive an attack, but generally a small business in the most cannot survive the attack. And that's why the importance to ensuring that doesn't happen and the right protection is in order to, of course, overcome that, or not overcome that, but more prevent that. So thank you for that insight. Now, what are some examples of how cyber attacks can impact the business? Can you share some real world stories here?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that there's a variety of ways that threat actors affect organizations, but I think for small businesses, there's kind of two primary impacts that they're going to be worried about: is the theft of confidential data or the corruption of that data where they can't access it. And so if you think about it, like companies that suffer data breaches tend to see a sharp decrease in repeat customers. And the reason being is that either the data that's been taken is leaked on the internet, or there's a case where you have core business data that the business owner can no longer access, which affects their business. To kind of give you a real world example, there was a fairly famous case of a healthcare provider in Finland, I want to say in 2021. But I think this is a kind of good example of what this looks like. So this was a healthcare provider that had less than 200 employees. It was a fairly small operation. In the grand scheme of things for healthcare, the healthcare industry, they only had about like 3 or 4 clinics. But essentially, ransomware actors, compromised their environment. And what they did is they found where they kept all their medical records. They exfiltrated all of their medical records. And then what they did is to extort this company, they started to slowly leak them over the internet. So obviously, there's a lot of things to unpack there from a business perspective. The first one is obviously that once they had locked up their medical records, they can no longer access them. But really, the big damage for this company was reputational damage. Once their clients' medical records were now on the internet, people stopped returning to that medical provider, and essentially they went out of business. And that's kind of one of those ones that was used as kind of a watermark kind of case. And I think that's obviously an extreme example, but I think that the key takeaways is that if you think about your business and you think about what are the records that you keep that are the most critical. And it could be anything from customer data to sales data, but anything that you keep that's sensitive, that's going to be what the threat actors target. And they're going to figure out some way to either sell that or try to extort you to return the data.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And just a message to all our attendees, important message. If you come in a bit late or if you leave early, please note that you will all be sent this replay for your own library. So it goes on. So afterwards, and of course, importantly, if something happens from a techno point of view, if one of us go missing, as we've often seen that, we'll be back. So don't leave us. And just important, but importantly, that if you'd like to listen to the replay again, we will send you the replay after this, of course, conversation. Now, you rarely hear about cyber attacks on small businesses. Are they at risk of experiencing a cyber attack, or do hackers mainly focus on large companies?
Mike, I'll take this one. And that's a very good question, because there's this misconception that small businesses are just too small to be of interest to unethical people who are hacking into systems. And because such a large percentage of businesses globally are small businesses, there's a lot of data out there that altogether is carried by these small businesses. And so while you hear about in the media attacks on large businesses, it's the small businesses that you don't hear about when they get attacked. Because the big businesses, you know their brand, you know about the business. So, if Uber gets attacked, that's, oh, wow, Uber's in a lot of places around the world. But if you hear that Mike's sandwich shop got hit, you're not going to hear about that in the media because not enough people know about Mike's sandwich shop.
Mm-hmm.
So and also because the losses at large businesses are much larger. And one thing that happens though is that small business owners and their employees are so busy, and they know their business, they know what they're doing, they continue day after day, month after month, year after year. But they may not be focusing on cybersecurity for their business because they don't think they're at risk, because the media is all talking about the big business, but they really are at risk. And we'll be talking about today some small things and easy steps that can be taken that can do a lot to help small businesses secure their business. And it really is important.
Okay.
So back to you, Mike.
Thank you. And what type of attacks are the most common?
I can take this one. So, I think a lot of times when we think about cybersecurity and cyber attacks, we think of something very, very technical. But after all this time, still the vast majority of most cyber attacks start with some form of social engineering. And social engineering is basically a collection of tactics to use to basically manipulate victims. And like the one that's kind of the quintessential one is phishing. And I suspect most people are familiar with phishing. That's basically an email that's sent to you that's trying to entice you to click on a link or send confidential information. And social engineering can take a lot of forms now. We have like multiple modes of communication in the modern world. So threat actors take advantage of that. They've shifted from just doing phishing to using text messages, phone calls. And probably a lot of you on the call will have experienced some of that. But the kind of the point is that it's an inherently non-technical initial access vector. And so what that means is that you can take a couple of, pretty, common sense approaches to kind of reduce your risk to those things. The first one is to, for you and for your employees, to kind of educate your employees to be on the lookout for those things. If you're receiving unsolicited emails, text calls, from folks that are, not business partners or clients, to just, look at those things with a level of skepticism. Is it coming from an email address that makes sense? Are you familiar with the data requests? Is there grammar or spelling mistakes? Because that's something that we still often see. And one of the trends that we've seen most recently is often phishing attacks that basically where there's nothing inherently malicious about it, and they're asking the victim to call a phone number, and that's kind of where the manipulation happens. So one of the things that we often suggest is that if you receive, let's say, an email from a vendor that you use, let's say, and they say, oh, we need to talk to you right away about, a bill or some other type of issue, just call the number that you have on file, or just Google them. Like, if you get an alert from, let's say, Apple, and Apple says, hey, something's wrong with your device, or we have a problem, just look up Apple's customer service number and call them directly, because that way you can make sure. And what you'll often find sometimes is that if you get let's say you get an email from your bank and your bank says you need to contact us, if you look up the customer service number, like they're going to obviously have a record. So if you call them and they don't have a record of it, then that was actually a phishing attack. But the point being is that this is kind of still like the most common initial access vector, and it's one that you can prevent by just kind of being cautious and being aware of who's contacting you. Back to you,
Perhaps,
Mike.
yes, please, Gina.
Before you go on, I'd like to give a personal example where I thwarted. I didn't fall for a phishing attempt. I was expecting a package at my home from MasterCard, my employer, and I got a text message. So this would be smishing, SMS phishing, smishing, and it came to both my work phone and my personal phone, and it was supposedly from the United States Post Office, and they said, we have a shipment for you, but the address is missing something. Click here to look at, to update your address. And I thought, I don't know the post office like that, which is kind of a thing that we use around MasterCard. I don't know you like that. So I did just as Chris said. I got on the phone. I called my local post office and I said, hey, would you have sent this? Would the post office have sent this? They said, absolutely not. That's a phishing attempt. So you've got to be wary any way you connect.
Well, I've learned something. Smishing. I've never heard of that before. So, but I think all of us, I'm listening to the conversation, and even myself, you don't even realize when you're getting attacked. You think especially these HTML emails you get, and then click on here to verify your bank details. And I would love to find the findings of research and how many people actually click on these links and put in their personal information. I'm sure it's alarmingly high, and that's why it's still being done so aggressively. But certainly, and just to continue further, I know you've touched on this. What should small business do to protect their business from a cyber? What else can one do for a small business to protect their business from a cyber attack?
So, Mike, I'll answer this one. The good news is that you don't have to be super technical when you are taking actions to improve the cybersecurity of your business. And you can do it one step at a time. And there's lots of resources that we'll talk about later to learn how to do these steps. But the things that are most important, and we'll talk a little bit more about these later, but using strong passwords is huge. You don't want to reuse passwords on multiple accounts. Never reuse that. You want to make them long and complicated, not like one of the most common passwords is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or password. Those are so easy to hack. And when you use the same password on multiple accounts, if hackers get your user ID and your password for one, they're going to test it on others. So that's really important. Multi-factor authentication is when you have a site, say your bank, that will verify your identity. You go and put your user ID and your password in, and then it will send you a notification to your text message or your email to confirm that it's you. Chris just said, watch out for those phishing emails and don't get hooked with those, because they can really wipe out your accounts. They can do a lot of damage. And best practices for account management. So say that you have an employee who has been working for you for a while, but they've moved on to another position at another business. You want to delete or disable their accounts because you don't want them to be able to get in. You don't want anybody to be able to get in. Also, follow that rule of least privilege, which means say that you have banking accounts and you have someone who is responsible for taking care of paying your bills and managing your money. Don't have a bunch of different people able to access those accounts, because that creates a vulnerability. And also, we'll talk about more later, but having a basic incident response plan is very important, because if you suffer a cyber attack, it's not going to do you any good to be, oh, no, what are we going to do? you need to say, okay, click into gear. This is what we're going to do. And use the free resources out there that are available to help you learn how to do the best practices and secure your business.
No, no, absolutely. And I think that's it. I think what we must all learn, I think we are, is that be wary of every email. Always keep it in the back, or every SMS or WhatsApp you get, keep it in the back of your head. Just make sure that it's genuine and it's directed from the right person. So absolutely. And what other actions, if there are any other actions, should small business owners take to improve cybersecurity?
Yes, I could take that one, Mike. So if we think about, I had mentioned the most common initial access vector was phishing. The second most common initial access vector is what we call exploiting public-facing applications, and all that really means is as a threat actor is exploiting a known weakness in some sort of internet-facing application or an application that runs on one of your devices. So this could be a weakness or a bug in the software, a technical glitch, a misconfiguration. And there's a lot of threat actors that what they do is they spend their time looking for these things, and then once they become public, they kind of rush to kind of exploit those weaknesses. So this might sound like a more technical issue, but there's actually a really kind of simple fix, I think, from a small business perspective, and that's just to basically keep your applications and your devices updated. It's something that we're all guilty of. You get the notification on your phone that says you have to update the iOS. Or you're using your browser, and the browser starts to turn orange and then red, and it's saying you need to update, you need to close the browser and update it. But 9 times out of 10, the reason that they're doing that is not just to install new features or functions. It's because it's to remediate security concerns. So point being is that as a best practice, you should try to make sure that your employees and that you as yourself as a business owner, that you're keeping all of your devices up to date. If you use any critical applications and you get notifications that they need to be updated, take those seriously and keep them up to date, because what a lot of folks don't realize is that threat actors are paying attention to that very closely. And once a very critical vulnerability is discovered in a particular piece of software or an application, they're going to basically pivot really quickly to that and try to basically take advantage of that.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Scary, but interesting, of course. Now, this is an important question. How should a small business owner respond to cyber attacks? Who, if anyone, should they notify for help or for whatever reason?
So I'll take that one. As I mentioned a minute ago, have an incident response and recovery plan in place. And you can go to the Cyber Readiness Institute. It's a nonprofit that focuses on small business and cybersecurity, but they have a template that you can use for that. But to give a summary of what you do, first you need to prepare for future events. Like I said, you don't want to be caught off guard with not being prepared, not knowing what to do. So you create this plan and make sure that everyone in your business knows how to report an issue. Like, oh my gosh, I think I just clicked on a phishing email and I gave up some data. So they need to know, to contact you as the owner and say, oh my goodness, this happened, let's take action. But then also how to respond to that. So in terms of responding, the short answer to this is when you give the employees the instructions, first of all, immediately turn off all devices, all computers, all phones, even all point of sale, transaction modules. Turn off all devices, because you don't want the hack to infiltrate all your systems. Also, do not send emails or do anything from your devices, which you can't if you've turned them off. Disconnect from the internet and intranet, if you have an internet within your company, by turning off Wi-Fi and unplugging your cables. And if you happen to have an internet service provider or a managed service provider, immediately contact them, because they will help you be able to unwind this. And if you do have cyber insurance, call your cyber insurance provider. Now, if this has been a cyber attack based on ransomware, there is a nonprofit organization called the No More Ransom Project. You can find them at nomoreransom.org, and they have hundreds of decryption keys, because what happens is hackers who get your data, they'll encrypt them, which means you can't access them. But if No More Ransom can provide a decryption key, it can reverse that. So that's important. And you also need to identify who is responsible for what in everything that they do.
Okay. And just an important message to all our attendees. If you need any information related to the discussion with Gina and Chris, please send an email to info@nspc.africa and we can assist. There's a couple of names that have been put forward, or organizations. Please just drop us an email and we can give you that insight. So, and also remember, there's the email address. Remember that you will all receive this as a replay, and you can revert back to the discussion. But there is the email. Any questions, you want to find out where these organizations are to get templates or downloads, please pop us an email and we can certainly assist you with that. Now, we spoke, Chris, you mentioned it earlier, the word ransomware, and I think we've all heard of that word. What about ransomware? Is this something small and mid-sized businesses need to be concerned about? And is there anything special they should do if impacted by ransomware?
Yeah, so for those of you that are unfamiliar, ransomware is a type of malware that what it specifically does is it encrypts files, making them basically inaccessible unless you have the decryption key. So what ransomware actors do is they get onto your systems, they seek out what they believe to be your most critical data sources and applications, and they encrypt them, and then they basically demand a ransom to provide the key. To put this into perspective, 80% of ransomware victims now are impacting companies that are under 1,000 employees. So, a few years ago, I think ransomware was something that most people thought of as being something that was targeting very, very, very large corporations, and it does still. But there are a lot of ransomware gangs that are out there that are targeting smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses. So, but to answer your question, the first thing I would say is to kind of dovetail on what Gina was saying a moment ago is I would come up with a plan. I think one of the things when you think about planning for those types of crises is that you don't want to be in the midst of some event and then trying to figure it out while you're already there. What you want to do is think about it beforehand. And part of thinking about beforehand for ransomware means backing up your critical data. So, for example, if you take time to identify the most critical data that you have, the ones that are the most sensitive, the ones that are most critical to your business operations, and you back them up, you store them onto, let's say, a removable hard drive or a thumb drive or some sort of device that's not connected to your network, then if you are impacted by a ransomware incident, you have the data stored offline that you can use to restore your systems. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest ones to consider. The second one I would say for ransomware, and this is something that Gina had mentioned earlier, but specifically to this threat, is really, really institute that principle of least privilege. If you have the more users that you have in your environment that have access to the critical data sources, the higher the likelihood is that the ransomware actors are going to be able to gain access to it and discover it and then encrypt it. So if you have the most critical data only really needs to be used by one employee, then only allow that employee to have access to that resource and make sure that they're backing it up and that you keep a cadence of that. And then all of those things would go into that plan where you start to kind of map out, okay, these are the things that I'm going to do beforehand. And then if I am impacted by ransomware, then I have resources to call. Again, circling back to what Gina said about best practices. All of those things are tied into ransomware. They're just a little bit more specific for that threat.
Okay, great.
And Chris, you mentioned something that's really important is backing up your data. Because backing up your data, if you get hit by a ransom attack, then you're only going to lose the amount of data that since your last backup. But Chris, what sources would you say would be the best place for backing up data?
So I mean, there's a number of organizations that can help you do that. But if you're really a small business, I would say removable media is one of the better ways to do that. So meaning that once let's say if you're a small healthcare provider and your most sensitive data is your patient records, it doesn't have to be super technical. You can just basically buy a removable hard drive, back it up on there, make sure that you take the hard drive out, and then you store it in a safe somewhere. And then that way, that's something that you always know that you can use to back up those types of records if you need them. There's a number of providers, and if you want, we can provide some suggestions that you might work with, because they range very much within the prices of the solutions that they provide.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a simple suggestion, but vitally important there, Chris. Get yourself a hard drive that you can put away in your safe in case. I know there's lots of options out there, but that's a simple but effective and an important option. And then, of course, I know it's been mentioned, but let's the final question. It has been touched on, but just to keep the mindset out there ready for this, what resources do you recommend small business owners check out to learn more about securing their business?
There are so many free resources out there, Mike. It's really heartening to see all the organizations like your organization, the NSBC, taking actions to help small businesses. One thing that I would like to share with you is that MasterCard has a free resource called the MasterCard Trust Center. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen so I can show what it looks like. Oh. See yourself here for a minute. So can you see this screen I'm sharing? Yeah, you should be able to. There it is. So this is the MasterCard Trust Center. And I have to say that this is something I've developed and I direct it, but it is a free resource for small businesses that is designed to help bring free education resources and tools to secure your business. And you can see we have some statistics on here. It's pretty scary what's out there. 95% of attacks are financially driven. I guess that's no surprise, but wow. And the unique part of this site is that you pick your learning journey based on your level of cybersecurity expertise. So if you don't know much, you can go to learn the basics. And we start off very with truly the basics, why cybersecurity is important, what is a cybersecurity incident, and so on. So, and then if you already know the basics, you can go right to expand your knowledge. And if you know the basics, but want to stay and plus more, and you want to stay ahead, go to Master Your Security. And I will show you very quickly how this is organized. So on each of the learning journeys, there are core concepts, cyber attack methods. So right here, you can learn more about multi-factor authentication and passwords, phishing, and software updates. And again, this is how the content is presented. And then you can test your business's cyber readiness and get best practices and free tools. So it's very worthwhile to be able to use those resources at your own pace to be able to secure your business. And again, everything on here is free. We also have some very cool videos that are called Cybersecure in 60 Seconds. And it is all about how to secure your business, very short podcasts as well. The resources go on and on. So I will stop sharing. So 2 organizations that you can access through the Trust Center are the Cyber Readiness Institute and the Global Cyber Alliance, well, and No More Ransom as well. And those are also places where you can go. So many resources. The Cyber Readiness Institute actually has a Cyber Readiness Starter program. They have a Cyber Readiness Full Out program, and these are learning. It's like going through a free course at your own pace. And if you get through the Cybersecurity Readiness program, you can qualify then to study for the Cybersecurity Leader certification program. The Global Cyber Alliance has a lot of free resources as well, and they have free tools. And I saw in the chat that someone said something about DMARC. You can go to find information about DMARC on the Global Cyber Alliance. And then No More Ransom I already spoke about. But there's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah, what's all nice about that is, Gina and Chris, it's absolutely free. And I mean, organizations, like MasterCard. I've been on there and we had discussions over the years on it. It's absolutely phenomenal. And so for no cost, a bit of your time, you can really put yourself into a highly protected situation. And, the problem is we don't want to say, if only we did this and if only we did that. And there's no need for that because there's no cost attached. Everything is free and it comes from the best globally. So please, guys, take a look. There's the link on our team has put the link up there. And of course, as I said earlier, email info@nsbc.africa if you'd like the link to be able to do that. There's a message there. Okay. Hi, Gene and Chris, can you please share the important information or links that they can follow with us? And we can include them into the replay email that we will send. Okay, so after this, if you don't mind popping a mail through, then we will, Leanne will include all these links into the replay that we will send to all the delegates out there. Alicia, thank you, Leanne. Thank you for that comment. So that's great. And of course, unfortunately, there's always an end to something great. And to Gina Ganal, Vice President of Product Development Management, Cyber Intelligence at MasterCard, and of course, Chris Carsten, Vice President, Cyber Threat Intelligence, Cyber and Intelligence Solutions at MasterCard. Your input has been absolutely essential and of course, hugely important to the survival and welfare of small business out there. So please, and to the team out there, to all our attendees from all over, thank you for being part of this. Without you, we can't do what we do. And that we've hoped, like me, I've learned an enormous amount today. I hope that we all hope that you have all can take something away from this that will help you in your business. And thank you for that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
All the best. And I have no doubt we will do this again in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. Would love to come back.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Go get
Thanks,
secure.
everyone.